Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome members and officers to this overview and scrutiny committee meeting, and welcome anybody watching online via North Arts Council YouTube channel. We also have some guests tonight, who we'll introduce later. Before the meeting starts, I would like to invite the committee clerk, Kaylin Ballard, to explain how proceedings will work and to undertake a roll call of those attending online to ensure that they can be here and be heard. Thank you, Kaylin.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just conduct a short roll call of the people joining us remotely. So when I call your name, if you could just ensure that we can hear you and that you can hear us. So have we got Chris Robson?
Yes, good evening, present.
Hi, and have we got Steve Crowley?
Yes, I am here. I can hear you. Thank you very much. I'm present.
Brilliant. Okay, so if a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. And the normal procedure rules in respect of debate and times to speak will apply. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room, and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start?
Thank you, Kaylin. Apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillors Ian Moody and Raj Bakar. Having given due notice, Councillor Moody will be substituted by Councillor Terry Hone. Good evening, Terry. Are there any further apologies? Nope, no further apologies. Thank you. Minutes of the 6th of December 2022, I propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the part 1 minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of December 2022. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Compton, thank you. Can we take that to the vote, please, Kaylin?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Notification of any other business, there is none. Chair's announcements. In accordance with the council policy, this meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed. The audio recording will be available on the NHDC website and ModGov, and the film recording on the NHDC YouTube channel. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking right is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. Public participation, there is none at this meeting. Item 6, urgent and general exception items. I have one since the last meeting, and I agreed the urgency of one item to Cabinet in December regarding the Careline in-house provision, as notice of part 2 was not provided in required time. And this was concerned with bringing some more Careline services in-house, and that went to Cabinet and was passed. Call-in items, no items have been called in. Members' questions, no questions from members have been received. Tonight's one of our slightly different evenings, so we have a crime and disorder presentation tonight. First, we have arts police presentations on antisocial behaviour, and we have PS Chris Adsheed. I'd say that right. Inspector James Land and DCI Hannah Treadwell. If you'd like to go ahead with the presentation, please.
Good evening, everybody. Just first of all, can everybody hear me okay? Lovely. Yeah, good evening, everybody. Thanks very much indeed for having us to the meeting. Just to put some context around that, my name is Sergeant Chris Adshead, and I'm the Community Safety Unit Sergeant for Stevenage and North Herts. And one of my many remits is to first line manage the antisocial behaviour officer in both North Herts and Stevenage, for which there is one for each. And I'm delighted to say I'm joined this evening by Jeanette Dallimore, who is the North Herts Antisocial Behaviour Officer for the police in a police staff role. So thank you very much. My understanding of this is that we were sort of going to give you an overview of how police record antisocial behaviour. If I might just ask, you've probably skipped through the first 3 slides. It will give you a little list of what we're going to be talking about tonight. So antisocial behaviour in terms of policing, and just to give you a little flavour of how antisocial behaviour is approached from the policing perspective. So what is it? We thought we'd go into a little bit of how it's recorded. I think that's probably very appropriate for people to understand, and effectively how we track antisocial behaviour. Next slide, please. So first of all, what is it? Well, the governance around this for most areas of policing now is under the jurisdiction of the College of Policing. So we'll take College of Policing guidance on how we set up around strategy. And the College of Policing have used a widely used definition from the Crime and Disorder Act 1998. There is no actual definition of antisocial behaviour. So we draw from this legislation in order to give ourselves obviously a guidance and guidelines on it. So you can see it for yourselves. They're acting in a manner that has caused or is likely to cause harassment, alarm and distress to one or more persons not of the same household. If you just move to the next slide, there is also a definition under the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act. And given that the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act is one that's used quite a lot in legislation around antisocial behaviour, both by police and local authorities, as well as some other bodies, it's important to understand that definition. Clearly, that one leans somewhat towards housing issues as well. So I think, though, it's important for everybody to be aware that as far as the police are concerned, in terms of victims of ASB, anybody who is a victim of ASB meets the definition. It's really important to understand the police will listen to anybody who perceives themselves to be a victim of ASB. Next slide, please. So if we just look at, again, just referring back to the College of Policing in terms of how it's recorded, there are guidelines which are given to police forces nationally, which fall under the Chief Constable's remit to ensure are happening around each of the constabularies. So effectively, you've got some guidelines there around how we scan incidents of antisocial behaviour, and scanning would be a recognised part of a problem-solving model nationally. So the first part of any antisocial behaviour problem solving, and that is what we try and do with antisocial behaviour, is try and solve the problems around antisocial behaviour. So the scanning would be effectively looking at police data to tell us where there are issues and whether reports of issues are backed up by police data, individual reports of incidents, other local services who provide data such as the local council, etc. And just basically doing a scanning to get an idea of what the problem is, either on a general scale or to an individual. We can also look at the hotspots through the use of CCTV. Street audits are really, really impactful for police. If we have a report of ASB, one of the first things we do is talk to people. It's really important to get out to a location, knock on some doors and say, you know, what is the issue that you're having? We need to get an idea and an accurate picture of what is actually happening. So talking to people is a massive one. And the Safe and Neighbourhood team within North Herts are very, very good at that. So interaction with people, community audits, kind of the same thing really, community surveys. And then what we need to do when we have that is then evaluate that information. So we have various police systems, one of which is our safety net system. And that is a system of not only recording ASB, but recording what we are doing as problem solving against that, using a scanning, using the scanning and some analysis of that problem, and then recording how we're going to attempt to solve that problem. That system has automatic, excuse me, has automatic supervisor reviews built in, so that we're aware of what's going on, and that supervisors have regular touch, because victims of antisocial behaviour are treated equally as victims of crime in terms of victim support. So we need to make sure we're doing regular audits and regular updates to that person to ensure that person's informed and understands what we're trying to do to help them. We can't always help. We can't always help alone, but there is no stone left unturned if a person is a victim of ASB in trying to resolve that for them, where the police can help. Next slide. So how does the police response tie into all of that? Because that's how our systems work and that's how we record it. But obviously people need to tell us about ASB. So effectively what happens is the public can call 101 or 999 if they're feeling in immediate danger in need of assistance straight away. Or equally, of course, what it doesn't say on there is an online reporting service directly into the force control room, which, believe you me, is sometimes a lot quicker than waiting for a 101 response. Call handler. So at the point of reaching the force control room, or FCR, an incident will be created, which is given an incident reference number, or ISR. Importantly, most importantly probably, that the risk associated with that call is then graded. So as you'll see, effectively, is it happening now? Is somebody in danger? Obviously, yes, we would respond immediately. But in terms of longer term problem solving, it may get an officer response. There is a dedicated team within the force control room called a community focused desk. And the community focused desk will handle calls of antisocial behaviour that need to be routed out onto area, as we call it. So they will be responsible for ensuring that the correct risk assessment has been applied and that the information is being routed appropriately. And of course, alternatively, if there is a need for an immediate response from the police, it will get an immediate response from the police. Next slide, please. You have to forgive me, this is an overview because I was told 14 minutes for 2 presentations and mine's one of them. So I'll try and steam through it for you. Right, that risk assessment is critical to this. The tool we use the most for that is called Thrive, and you can see for yourself there. It's a threat, harm, and risk, which are words we're all hopefully very familiar with. System, whether it needs an investigation and to what level. Vulnerability of the victim, really critical to assessing the need of the victim, and what level and form of engagement we're going to take. And that needs to be documented on that incident reference, so that the community focused desk and the supervisors for the force control room call takers can ensure that has been done correctly, so it is auditable. Next slide, please. How's it tracked? Well, I've mentioned safety net. We won't go back there. I've already mentioned that. The street meets. Again, street meets for gaining information, but also for qualifying information to make sure that the problem's getting solved and that we're meeting our objectives. A street meet to follow up and see, especially if we've used powers under perhaps the ASB Crime and Policing Act, it's good to go back, especially for around closure orders that we've done, or if we've given community protection notices to individuals not to be in an area or something equivalent, to go back and find out the positive impact that's had and just make sure that the solution that's been applied has worked. Echo, really important one. I think we might come on to that in a little while, but Echo is a system whereby you can communicate to the police what you think the important things that the police should be dealing with are. We'll come on to that maybe in a little bit. Power BI is a new system that we've got, which effectively crime analysts can put data onto. I think I'm right in saying crime analysts. I'll just check my information. Yeah. So effectively, it's a system that I'm a user. I'm the end user. So effectively, I can go in now and I can scrutinise where the hotspots are in all sorts of different ways, and it will just map it for us. So the safer neighbourhood teams and the community safety unit can use that as a tool to map and track where our issues are. Briefing slides, brilliant. So we have our intervention teams who are the 24-hour response. Every time a team books on, they go through a briefing, which is effectively a PowerPoint presentation. If we've got antisocial behaviour issues, or we've got a particular individual needs tracking or whatever, or engaging, that can be briefed out directly to the front line so that they know the issues that we're facing. And special operations tackling ASB. So there are obviously we put together plans and operations to ensure that we're meeting specific targets. And again, we may come to that in a little while. Next slide. Questions. So I don't know if you want to do that now. We have got another presentation, or I'll leave it back to the chair to.
Yeah, if anybody's got any questions so far, did I put hands up so far? Anybody? No? We want to move on your presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much. If anybody does think of any in the future, Chair, if they'd like to email me direct, not a problem. I'm more than happy to engage. So thank you for the opportunity of doing that. And I'll move. Yeah, thanks.
Good evening, committee. Thanks for giving us the time tonight also to give you a quick presentation around street safety, specifically in the context of what remains a very significant topic nationally, violence against women and girls. We were asked just give a little bit of an update on what work North Herts Police have been doing to try and improve feelings of street safety in the CSP. So I'll take you through a few slides around that. And again, there'll be opportunity for questions at the end. I'm conscious of time, so I will speed through fairly quickly. If I'm going too fast, please tell me. Next slide, please. So Chris already mentioned our Echo community survey platform. This is a very well embedded program now that we use in across Hertfordshire, where we can tailor surveys to reach out to the public and ask all sorts of questions. And there's some examples here about what we use it for. For instance, our priority setting forum work, we set up bespoke surveys that go out to local community where they can give information around the concerns for them in the area they live. Street meets we conduct regularly, and we will take tablets along, and the public can also anonymously, if they wish, provide any feedback they'd like to do so about problems in their area. And we're also using it for our work around VORG, specifically in the nighttime economy in North Herts at the moment. We have officers every Friday and Saturday night engaging with women and young girls in the local community. We present this survey to them, and they get the opportunity to give us comments around whether they do feel safe. And thankfully, very often they do, but also they'll give us feedback and comments around where sadly they don't, whether that's through a perception or because of some issue in a particular area. And that helps us to direct firstly our patrols if there is a new location that we're not previously aware of, but also I'm on the I chair the VORG subgroup in JAG, and that information also feeds back into our group. We review it collectively as a partnership group, including NHC, including Herts Fire and Rescue, local housing associations, to look at what work we can do from a joined up point of view to address those issues, whether it be lighting, whether it be CCTV, or whether it be things like education, which is something I'll come on to in a minute. And I know certainly the survey Echo is starting to be used by partners, including I think Settle Housing Association have used it for some of their engagement activity with their residents as well. So it's kind of it's a growing concept, but certainly something that I'm pleased to say North Herts is ahead of the game on, but really useful in terms of our engagement around VORG. Next slide, please. So we just picked out a flavour of some of the feedback that we've had. We run quarterly surveys where the Echo team assemble all of the feedback for us. And as I say, that then feeds back into how we determine our patrol plans, and also how this gets reviewed by the other members of the VORG subgroup. And as you can see, it is a mix. You can see some really positive comments on there. And on the left of the comments, and then the right-hand column is around, what could we do better, or what are we not doing correctly? And occasionally you do get things like fixing potholes in the road, which sadly isn't something for us, but important we document that, and of course we forward that on accordingly. I think there's another slide similar nature. If you can just do next slide, please. So it comes into us as a sort of raw data set, and then it's all about actually pulling out, do we have a particular road name, a particular location, a particular hot time that we are not previously aware of. We'll then overlay that with our Power BI data. We have a specific data set around VORG, we have a specific data set around ASB, and we can actually go down to the granular level, actually hour by hour, location, individual street by individual street for the whole of North Herts, to see are we seeing these reports reflected by what's coming in from the public. And of course, if we do see an overlay, then that can help direct where we are patrolling and making sure we are in the right place at the right time. And just to get that hour by hour coverage for the first time is actually quite transformative. We've not really had that data to access before to that level. So it's still embedding itself, Power BI, but I actually think that's going to be a really powerful tool for us going forwards, overlaid with all the other data that comes into us. Next slide, please. So I mentioned about education, and very happy to say that very recently, Sunday before last, we had our first ever personal safety event for women and young girls that was also open to men as well. It took place at Hitchin Town Hall in partnership with the Community Security Trust, and we had some great support from John Marshall and his team in setting that up. It was a free event, and we had about 55 to 60 people there in the end, and it was an hour's input, and there was a question and answer session at the end. And I was speaking to Councillor Bryant earlier, who was in attendance along with Councillor Thomas. I think it was a very, very good first effort. We are looking to repeat that event elsewhere in the CSP, you know, looking at Letchworth and Royston as well. But certainly the first event of its kind in North Herts, and potentially I think in the county as well at this level. So we've now got a really strong relationship with the Community Security Trust and can hopefully tap into their expertise going forward. And the feedback was strong. So I think that's equally as important a strand to consider, as well as patrolling. I think it's important to emphasise that North Herts remains one of the very safest parts of Hertfordshire, and offences where women and young girls are targeted, whether it be stalking, whether it be stranger attacks, are thankfully extremely low. But of course, I appreciate the perception remains very, very different, and we still have many, many women, young girls who don't feel safe to be out in certain places at certain times of the night. And of course, we need to be mindful of that. Next slide, please. So also we have a sort of multi-channel response to this. I'm mindful of time, so I'll just nip through these headings here. It's not just necessarily about stalking and stranger attacks. We do have other problems with things such as, sadly on occasion, aggressive begging from members of the homeless community. So we have Operation Urban in place, which some of you might have already heard of, driven fantastically by Sergeant Adshead behind me. And again, North Herts is a real leader for this, along with Stevenage, to really embed this process. And it is not about shaming homeless people that are genuinely in need. It's about trying to find them help, trying to divert them away from their behaviour, which can sometimes lead to them having confrontations with the public, and also coming, sadly, into our attention. What we try to do with Urban is give opportunities to people that do find themselves in very difficult circumstances, and see if we can divert them away from that behaviour, referrals into homeless charities, education opportunities, all sorts of options available to them. And if they take up that offer, then we've had some really good success. And of course, a last resort is that we do have to take the criminal justice route, but it's very much only when all other options have been exhausted. Operation Gallican is our nighttime economy model. Again, North Herts is a forerunner for this. So we have a plan in place, every focus primarily Friday and Saturday night, where we'll have officers out in the town engaging with our higher risk licensed premises, engaging with door staff, checking they've got the right door staff there, checking their CCTV is operating, checking their numbers are appropriate, and of course also undergoing that engagement with our feelings of safety survey. And that, again, from a preventative point of view, we are seeing some really, really good results. And I think nighttime economy impact in North Herts has steadily declined since Operation Gallican has been in place. We still have our high risk premises, and we still have challenging moments on those Friday, Saturday nights. But in the 3 years that I've been in role, I would certainly say that North Herts is in a significantly better place now than it was then. Operation Sagas, just very quickly, again, first of its kind, as far as I know, for the county. This was a test purchase operation involving volunteers from North Herts College and North Herts Police visiting our certain hotels in the division, where we essentially approached the staff, and we had an officer in plain clothes with a female student from North Herts College, essentially trying to book a room and seeing if the staff would challenge that, because they've all received training and had a certain level of education around this. And it yielded some very interesting results, because sadly every single hotel failed the test purchase. The positive is that we can now engage with those hotels going forward and get the education side of things sorted. And of course, if they don't improve their situation, we will look at the license side of things as well with NHC. Next slide, please. Yeah, I think I'll cover most of this with regards to JAG, which obviously sits underneath the Responsible Authorities Group. Schools liaison in terms of education is normal business for us, and we regularly go into our schools giving personal safety talks, knife crime and associated subjects. So, and our joint ASB group, which is something Chris and Jeanette run, that's another multi-agency platform for us to discuss emerging issues, which includes, where appropriate, feelings of safety issues for women and young girls. And I think, is that the last slide? Next slide, please. Yeah, I mentioned prevention first. This has been embedded now for 2 years in the constabulary, driven by our chief constable, and it's all about getting ahead of problems and solving those problems before they become significant issues. And I think very much the operational examples I gave you a few slides ago is very much driven by that ethos. Much better to do a test purchase at a hotel than to have a report of where a young female has been subject to a serious sexual offence, and that's what's driving all the work currently in North Herts. And that's me done. So I'll hand back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I've got questions already. I've got one as well, but Tamsin.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I've got two questions, if I may. The first one relating to the data collection, and you were going fast, and so I think you might have said it, but I might have missed what you were saying. At that the women's safety event, but also I do a lot of work with evening events for members of charitable organisations where a lot of older women won't travel unless we pick them up and bring them because of safety concerns. And I just wanted to understand from the sort of data collection, the extent to which we can understand how much older women's liberties are essentially being infringed by their perceptions of a lack of safety. And then I have a second question, which I'll follow up on once you answer that one.
Yep, I forgot to mention that. If we've learned anything from Gallican, we're engaging with a certain demographic, and that's people that are using the nighttime economy. But what about our elderly residents? What about younger girls as well? And so I should have mentioned that for this year, we are looking to widen the scope of that, the use of that survey, because I'm sure you're hearing those accounts that are troubling you, but we're not seeing that because we're zoning into one very important demographic group, and it's something that we're going to be developing this year. I suppose, the answer is that we need to engage with those members of your community so we can understand again what is driving that perception. There are many issues around perception that the police really not necessarily solve. We're not responsible, sadly, for lighting and CCTV. We can't get into someone's head and help them to try and change that perception. But I think I touched upon this at the Vorg event as well, that it is about the behavior of males of varying ages, and often their behavior. And the CST, if you remember the video that they showed as well, is quite troubling to me. And again, that's quite a big societal question to answer. But absolutely, that we're missing a trick here. We haven't got the full channel kind of feedback, and that's something we're going to be developing this year.
Yeah, do you want to do a second question, Tamsin?
My second question, and it was one I mentioned to you before, but just want to ask it again in this forum, was obviously, I think there were two men in the room, and they look like husbands carrying bags to me, and some of the advice being given specifically around mothers in Hertfordshire worried that their teenage sons are using incel language, repeating what they're hearing from Andrew Tate, and the advice was male role models need to know how to step up. But if the male role models aren't coming to that training, it's very hard for me to understand how we're going to counter that. So just wanted to find out if you'd had any ideas since we spoke, I guess, about how we might try and get more men to show up to events on women's safety. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a massively important question, and I observed the same thing. And yes, it was open to everyone. Did I expect to see many males there? No. Could we have promoted that aspect more heavily? Yes. And then it's, as you say, your comment around the husbands carrying the bags, it's great to see them there, but you're thinking about a different group, aren't you? And what the answer is. And I think I'm going to have to still take that away and think, if we are setting up these future events, what does our comms plan look like? Because if we just keep doing it in the same way, we're going to get the same group of very well-meaning, well-intentioned people there who are there to learn and there to understand, but they're actually not the group. It's the group, like in that video that was featured, for those of you that were there, we need them to sit there and hear that and feel that experience. And I need to think about how I achieve that. So I'm afraid work in progress.
So, Sergeant Usher, did you want to come in?
If I may, just fully support everything the inspectors just said there. But just as a matter of interest, one of the reasons I put schools liaison on the slide was because I also have the privilege of managing the hate crime officer for North Herts and Stevenage. And one of the things that the hate crime officer has done very successfully recently is, at least one I know of, and I think I'm right in saying more than one, is going into schools where there is troubled young men from troubled backgrounds, and has been doing some education work from an early age around the importance of embedding the message that it's not okay. And I think one of the things we've got to do, it won't necessarily fall into the police's remit, but wherever we can, I think that's important that we get that message out early as well. So there is some engagement, and over the course of the next sort of year now, calendar year as we go, there's a plan to roll that out a bit further, because all of the schools that we go into to do hate crime talks, which we do across Stevenage and North Herts, we're now going to start embedding that certain misogynistic sort of theme into that, because that is obviously feeds quite directly into hate crime. Just for your information, hope that helps with you.
Thank you for that. Nigel, Len, Terry. Nigel.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, thanks very much for both presentations, both really interesting, and thanks to all your officers for the good work that they do. It is appreciated. I'm not sure how many people stop to tell them, but they should do. I represent Hitchin Norton Ward, which includes Westmill. And if we were out there now talking to residents, aside from the first issue would be road safety, but the second one would be drug dealing, which is sort of, as I'm sure you're painfully aware, like a sort of game of whack-a-mole around the area. And I think every time I ever go out canvassing or talking to people on the doorstep in the area, I hear another place where someone's selling drugs. And I guess it's the classic antisocial behaviour thing, in the sense, generally it's irritating to people, and sometimes it's intimidating to people. And it is, as I said before, like a lot of problems with crime, it's about perception. I suspect if we looked at the stats for how many people have been physically assaulted or anything else by a drug dealer in the area, I suspect it would be a very low figure indeed. But the perception is there. And I hear, it breaks my heart when I hear people say they wouldn't let their teenage daughter go to the shops on their own because there's people hanging around allegedly selling drugs. It's that perception thing. So I guess I'm interested to hear anything. And things like, as you know, we got a new camera in there. It was great. Now, if you look at where people stand to allegedly sell drugs, they've clearly worked out the range for the camera. And we will get that alley closed one day. So I suppose question is, anything we can do to work together on it. And that's my thing. As local councillors, how can we best engage? I'm really conscious. I don't want to impinge on your officers' time in a way that's unhelpful. But I do feel, I've only been a councillor a year and a half or something. There's one thing I don't feel I've done properly, is learn how to engage with your officers. And that would be really helpful. Just so there's more of an ongoing, rather than a kind of formal thing, just an ongoing dialogue where I can feed in stuff I hear, and perhaps they can say to me, could you keep an ear out for whatever? Because they're going to hear a lot of things I don't hear, and vice versa. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah. This is also something very important to me, about building those relationships with our ward councillors. We have a ward PC and a ward PCSO, and that relationship should be very, very strong. From my own experience, it varies around the CSP, but if we have got a councillor that is interested in really engaging with those officers, you're pushing through an open door. You really are. Probably as recently as 3 weeks ago, I reminded my officers of the importance of building those relations at ward level, because those conversations then naturally start to happen. You can give that kind of more subtle stuff around perception that maybe we're not seeing because there aren't the stats to back it up. And that's where you are so important to have that relationship with us. So it's a priority for me at the moment. It genuinely is. And that's something I'm very happy to take away. Out of interest, have you heard from the local officer in recently? Has there been any contact?
I got about, I just wanted to come back on that, because if there's a fault in communication, I think it's mine, not theirs. Okay. And for instance, I think we had the issue of the dead foxes, the infamous dead foxes of Bolton Head Common, and officers engaging were brilliant, absolutely brilliant, including talking me through and I was able to reassure people, because that was getting quite aerated. It was. So no, the engagement is there. I'm going to go seeking it. It's just how I get that on, and I think that's it's me needs to do something, I think, but
I know some of the officers have set up regular surgeries with the councillors, whether it be once a quarter, once every couple of months, and maybe something that's in the diary is a good starting point. And very much, if you want to initiate that with the officers, if you need any help with me getting that across the line, I'm very happy to support that. Okay,
thank you. Just picking up on that point about the surgeries, before we move on to Terry, we have a regular councillor surgeries in Hitchin, Letchworth, in all the districts. Last Saturday we had one in Letchworth, and it was only halfway through the surgery we realised that you had one as well in a coffee shop down the road in Letchworth.
Right.
So
Right.
you had a police surgery in Letchworth, and we had our
Yes.
council surgery, and we both working. And it was only halfway through we realised that you were doing it, and it would be useful. We used to do it in the past. We used to have joint surgeries,
Yeah.
not every one,
No.
but once every 3 months or so. We used to get together. We'd all be represented. So it may be something that's worth picking up on that one.
It might be worth mentioning when Becky was in post, she would send us regularly the schedule of
Yeah.
all the planned surgeries across the CSP. I have noticed that I don't know if we necessarily, certainly not my level, get notified of that schedule now. I don't know if there'd be a way for us to restart that, because absolutely we should be doing these jointly in the way you say.
Yeah, Steve's just said he'll pick up on that one and follow through. Terry.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. Could you tell me about the Ask for Angela programme and how you're promoting that, both with the ladies of the district and also with the people, for example, bartenders, etc., etc.?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thanks for that one. Ask Angela is a national campaign, obviously. That's been handled more through the licensing officer, who I also happen to have the pleasure of first line managing. So you'll see there's a bit of a theme here. But no, the pub watches have been really heavily encouraged to promote Ask Angela, because effectively it's something that the licensed premises need to promote as well as the police need to promote. So effectively that needs to happen. I think Ask Angela is also used on the Op Gallican. So when we're engaging people on I think the best way of describing this to you is there is Op Gallican is set up between the Safer Neighbourhood team and the intervention teams. The Safer Neighbourhood team have responsibility for the early part of the nighttime economy. So they will go out and engage not only the licensed premises to make sure, do a few basic licensing checks for safety, just make sure the CCTV is working, the door staff are there that are supposed to be there, etc. But they're also there to engage any of the public that are there prior to getting too busy and people having, quite a bit to drink, etc. And at that part of the evening, Ask Angela is one of many topics which is discussed with the public on that engagement. So it's a kind of a two-pronged approach, really. So yeah, we are promoting it, but it needs also to be driven by the licensed premises themselves. They need to have the posters up. They need to make the door staff aware, etc. So that if anyone does ask for Angela, they're aware of what that actually means. So it's not a police-driven incentive, but it's one that we support, and it is covered by the police in the nighttime economy for sure. Does that help? Does that answer the question? I thought there might be something a bit more behind it. I wasn't quite sure. But...
No, not really. It's just something which I recognise is available, and I've seen it happen once. So I think it's promoted by mainly the licensed premises, and as long as the bar staff know what to do when some girl goes up to the counter and asks for Angela, what's her response? Some say, "What? Yeah. Who?" Others might say, "Oh, yeah, sure. Come with me. I'll help you." So as long as they recognise, I think it's encouraging that. And yes, it's up to the licensed premises to do it, but also I think you have a role to play, because it's antisocial behaviour, and obviously it could be grooming, it could be anything. Yeah, it could be any things that the nasty things that happen in the world today. So Ask for Angela is something which is an opportunity for us to continue promoting, and for you to continue to promote as well. Thank you.
Yeah, 100%. And also it might be of interest, just before this meeting, we were discussing Southwark Council have got a charter effectively in place where the police and the council work together to promote what both should be doing in conjunction with each other to make sure that people are safe in the community. And one of the things that we were discussing just before this meeting is effectively putting a charter together with the police licensing authority, et cetera, and the licensed premises themselves, almost like a standard of professional conduct to make sure training is in place, etc. Ask Angela forms a part of that. And again, it is, it's certainly on the radar, but I appreciate the question. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with that.
Thank you for that. Alistair.
Thanks, Chair. I was actually going to, come back slightly on what Nigel was saying about regularly meeting or having meetings with your community police officers, because I have regular catch-ups with the ones for Bulldog. But coming to go forward in that, one of the things that we spoke about, and I'm hoping as you're the inspector, you'll be supportive, was perhaps a sort of police counsellor walkabout. So we walk around the ward, we talk about the issues, we point out what issues are occurring, because quite a lot of stuff that's brought to me is stuff that people should be taking to their community police, but they're not necessarily, they're like, oh, I'm not really sure that, you know, I wouldn't want to bring that because I don't want to be above her. And I'm just like, well, I will be above her for you. So I think it's that would be a really good way of taking forward those issues that people aren't really bringing to you, because as you said, we're ears, and we're able to bring that stuff. So I thought that might be quite a good idea. The other thing I was going to say was about the Women's Safety Charter, because Steve Sean, the executive for that covers licensing, and I have been working on that, and so hopefully, I'm sure Steve will have more to say about that soon. Yeah, so that's some really good stuff, I think, coming on.
Just, yeah, absolutely support the walkabout. I've done it with the local MP several times. I'd be very happy to come on one of those in Baldock as well. It's useful for me to see that at my level along with the local officers, and we'll extend that offer to the other ward councillors here as well. So yes, we absolutely can arrange that. And yeah, the charter that's been mentioned, I'm hoping that's going to be the next big project for the JAG subgroup that I chair to roll out, because I think the Southwark model has a lot of potential to it, and I think we can do something similar here. So watch this space.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, we used to do quite a lot of walkabouts, and I've been out in the car a couple of times in the past with the officers on a Saturday night, which was extremely interesting, shall we say. And I don't envy your job one little bit on a Saturday night. Claire.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for coming along and giving your presentations. And I would like to give a big shout out to PCSO 6510, otherwise known as Heather the Burrows, who has already sent to me her timetable of all the surgeries that she's planning to do, so I can trape along. She does have a penchant for coffee shops and tea rooms, so that's always quite good. But I think the biggest problem when we're doing that is, to be honest, we don't see a lot of the public. I mean, we are there, and it's always getting that publicity to make sure that as many people that can or want to come and talk informally. I must admit, outside the village shop in Whitwell is very good, because you've got everybody coming in and out on a Saturday morning, and everybody seems to know her. So I say some of your officers are doing an excellent job and are in that engagement. However, one of the things that we used to see was the priority setting meetings, and I haven't been to one of those recently, so I don't know whether I've missed it or I haven't been invited, or the communications has gone out and it just didn't reach my inbox or wherever I was looking for it. But I always think I think pre-pandemic, we used to get quite a lot of people attending in the particular wards and areas to do that. And you got quite a reasonable turn of people who did bring along their usual list of what was important to them. And yes, some of the things you've mentioned tonight are always on that list, and I don't know how we get them off that list. We have seen some of your officers from time to time do come to the Hitchin surgery on a Saturday morning, 10:30 till 12, first Saturday of every month. You'll be more than welcome to come if you're around. We'd love to see you. I have to say, only when we thought there might be some issues or problems have we had police attendance. But other than that, we're there. We do feel safe when we are there, particularly when we're interacting with the public. I don't particularly feel that I'm going to have any issues of assault, but then Nigel's usually there, so I usually duck behind you. One of the concerns that always, thank you. I know, and I do think we look after ourselves, and if we are out and about feeling vulnerable. But one of the concerns I've had is that I know that from the council they have removed a lot of the CCTV cameras that were in and around the district. I've often thought that CCTV cameras, as you quite rightly said, are there because people that might be thinking of doing something know that they're there. So they'll be off camera. They won't be on that high street. They won't be in that particular area. And I just wondered if you were aware that some of these cameras have been removed, and if you did know that, whether or not you were able to look to see whether or not there had been any increase in antisocial behaviour or crime in those areas. For example, one of the particular areas that now has no coverage, and I hope none of the crime people out there are listening to this, is actually Nebworth. So they had 2 cameras, they now have none. So it's something that I know the local ward members would be looking at to see whether there is an increase in crime and disorder. But the cameras have gone, and that usually cameras, the idea is to move them around and to put them in hot spots so that you know, they can help and aid you as police. But I'm also concerned from my perspective in some of those areas where they have gone completely. And the other thing we always like in the village areas is mobile cameras, because again, you know, we do have crime. There is quite a lot of crime. We have a lot of drugs going on. You know, people, if they can't sell them in the towns, they'll come and sell them in the villages. So it's trying to catch those people. And certainly those people, as they're coming into the villages, they're driving in and out, whether they're in cars or motorbikes. So it must be easy enough to do them. And my other last question was, I know the police from time to time actually go around the pubs with one of those lovely little dogs and to sniff out to see whether or not there's drugs in the pubs. And the last time I remember it was done, the answer was every single pub had a drugs problem.
Okay, thank you for those questions. Certainly really grateful for the feedback around Heather Burrows, who's an absolute shining star on our team, and I will make her aware of your feedback this evening. That means a great deal to her. Priority setting forums, it was the late Councillor Billing who asked over the last year for us to restart face-to-face consultations again. They obviously stopped during COVID, and we've had a year of doing them, and the uptake from the public was extremely low, and we received far more responses through our OWL surveys and through our ECHO surveys than we did sadly in person. And we did a review at the end of this year and made the decision that the numbers were so low that it was difficult for us to justify. And you're right, before COVID they were higher, but it was unusually low, and we did very carefully analyze this because we didn't take that decision lightly. So we were asked to trial it for a year, along with the online consultation, but sadly it across the board the numbers were very low indeed. So at the moment we're returning to online consultations only. We can keep that under review, and if we see that there's a clamour for us to go back to that again, we're happy to trial it. But we have just tried for an entire year, and it sadly didn't go very well, despite very heavy promotion of each event for the 4 districts. Surgeries, I think we've already covered that. As long as we get the list through, I see no reason. I can't guarantee you'll have an officer at every single one of them, but I would expect to see frequent and regular presence there. And it shouldn't just be, if we've got a concern about public safety, it should be because it's the right thing to do. CCTV, mobile cameras, I know there's a process where bids can be made for mobile cameras, and John Marshall is our contact there, and we've used them in the Westmill estate as mentioned earlier. And if there is enough justification, we can certainly make that bid. Without having the stats in front of me, it would be difficult for me to say whether or not I could promise you one for your district, but very happy perhaps we can have a conversation outside of this around that, and we can look at it. With regards to the loss of the cameras, I don't think I knew that they've gone. I know there is a CCTV review still underway, led by NHC, and we've attended several meetings. We've been asked to provide various crime and ASB data in relation to that to see if any of the cameras need to be moved. I do recall there was a discussion around the Nebworth cameras at one point, but I wasn't aware they've both gone, and I don't know the full reasoning behind that. It might be worth asking these questions of the person who's leading the CCTV review, because I know it's still not completed. So sorry, I can't give you a straight answer.
Okay, thank you for that. Adam, then Tony, then Val. So Adam.
Thanks, Chair. I do have a question about why you were locked up in the back of a police car, but I might save that for another time. I don't believe your story one bit. One of the things that we have at Royston, and kudos to Sergeant Vine and his team, is they're always at our surgeries, every single one. They quite often come with their quad bike or some stands and try and really get people engaged in actually coming over in the first place and having that discussion. And I think that works really well. Turnout tends to be fairly low, unfortunately, but we always make sure it's on a market day and make sure that we're visible. So I think that's really working well. I think the thing that struck me about this conversation was the low turnout for men to come to these women's safety events. Unfortunately, it's men that statistically are more likely to commit domestic violence and all that sort of thing. And one of the things that I noticed when I was in New Zealand a couple of years ago, on the back of behind the urinals where you go to pee, you've normally got some adverts about what's on Sky Sports in the coming weeks and so on and so forth in the pub. They actually had a big campaign about domestic violence, and it was very self-reflective for men. So not only say things like "don't do this," it's have you seen any of this behaviour from your friends? Have you seen this? Have you done this yourself? Are you actually committing domestic abuse?
I thought that was actually quite a good way, because it was quite a good way of making men self-reflect and thinking, okay, well, I don't do that. And you think, oh, well, I didn't. But, you know, some people might go, oh, that's not cricket. Or actually, I've seen some of that traits in my friends or in around. Maybe I'm going to be interested in going to, you know, that sort of event. So it might be worth putting some leaflets up and seeing if that gets any traction. It sounds like they're the sort of men, pub age men that are going out on Friday and Saturday nights potentially that you want to highlight. It might be worth a shot. It certainly struck a chord with me, because I thought that was the first time I'd seen something like that, you know, in a location like that. So I thought it was quite useful.
Tony.
Chairman, I'll keep it brief because Councillor Compton said some of the things I was going to say about Royston, in the sense that we've got very good lines of communication, have done for a number of years. Surgeries are well attended by the police. And in fact, there's a lot of interaction with children at surgeries as well, which is a good thing to see, especially the smaller ones, because the officers there bring along a few knickknacks and things that they can play with, and they quite enjoy it. So it's very good to see. And as far as priority setting, we've got that in place as well. And if I have a problem, I know exactly who to ring, and it's always been there, and it's just grown over the years. So I just wanted to make you aware. I don't think you've got a problem with Royston.
Thank you for that. Val?
Having listened to Councillor Hunter, I think I need to move to Royston. I was going to say that in Hitchin, I went to the last face-to-face police priority setting meeting, which I'm sure that Councillor Strong was there, but maybe my memory's playing a trick with me. I think it is important that councillors actually have some part in the priority setting. And what concerns me about using Echo and the online methods is that means that we don't. That's what I was going to say before I heard Councillor Hunter. But maybe the way forward is to actually ensure that we get these joint surgeries right, and that we do talk, so we are involved in the priority setting. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. That was one of the points I had to pick up on as well. I think the other one was sort of stemming from what Alistair said, was about people contacting local councillors and rather than going to the police. And I've had the same. I said, well, have you rung 101? And I get two answers usually. One is they never answer the phone, or you can't get through, or they haven't got a clue what I'm talking about. Or two, the people feel that's a little bit of a step too far to think they're taking it, you know, making it official when they just want someone to have a little word. So I think what a lot of members have made a point about better working relationships and working more between us, I think is really, really valid point to make on that one. And the second one I think Val touched on as well was when you do the surveys, how is it always online now, or do you still do the personal contact stuff and posters and bits like that?
Surveys, or the Echo surveys generally?
The Echo generally priority second, really, but because there's always a group of people, an element that, particularly the elderly and the vulnerable, who can't do the online stuff. And do you acknowledge that and recognise that?
So we're keenly aware of that not everyone can use these systems. That's exactly why we wanted the face-to-face priority setting forums to be more of a success last year, to give that option for people that don't want to stare at a screen and do it that way. So what we do undertake regularly is our Safer Streets meetings, where we will go to, I think we mentioned it in one of the slides, where we will be there physically in a particular community. There will be a stall, there will be an opportunity to speak to an officer, there'll be an opportunity to report information to them. If they don't want to perhaps give their full details, we have the tablet for Echo, so they can still make a report, but it's not attributed to anyone. So it's kind of a hybrid of both. It's not that we're all doing everything online now. I'm just talking about priority setting. That is the model at the moment, but I'm keenly aware that we still have an issue then around our harder to reach communities who don't want to use that kit. And I think that's where our Safer Streets work comes in very effective. We have the Neighbourhood Policing Week of Action this week. It's a national campaign, and we're out every day this week in different parts of the CSP doing Safer Streets events, signing people up to OWL, giving them crime prevention advice, talking to them about their issues, and taking that back to feed into our responses going forward. So I think this week is a great example of that. But of course, it's not just this week. This is part of our normal business, and there should always be opportunities for the public to see their local team. And we do regularly undertake that kind of work. Are we covering all our communities sufficiently? Probably not. And I think we can always improve our model. But yes, certainly it's sort of a hybrid approach seems to be the way forward. I think the other area we're not tapping into enough is younger people. So I know that with our priority setting forum, there are very few young people that engage with that at all, despite providing very simple options to do that. We're asking the question ourselves, why not? And that I think is going to require some more schools liaison this year as well. So that's another bit of work we're developing. So yeah, always room for improvement.
Thank you very much for that. Hannah, did you want to come in on anything?
I just wanted to say thank you. It's my first formal week as the new Chief Inspector for North Herts. Hence, I've come slightly mob-handed with my team of very experienced experts here, so that rather than just sitting here and saying, well, I can't really answer your question, I'll take that away, we've hopefully been able to find some clarity around those concerns that you have. And I've been busy scribing away just to take some stuff away for me as well to look into. So thank you to you all for your questions and the positive feedback and the constructive as well that we can hopefully improve on. And thank you to the team for hopefully giving, as I say, a bit of a more of an insight around ASB and the Safer Streets and what we're doing. And I look forward to working with you all over the next few years or however long I'm here. Thank you.
So thank you very much, and thank you for coming. Just before I move on to the next one, Adam.
Thanks, Chair. The only other thing I forgot to say earlier was the charter idea that Southwark have got. I think that's something that would be well worth looking into. So are we able to put a recommendation for someone to start the ball rolling on the feasibility, at least, of putting that in place? Because I think that's a brilliant idea.
Yeah, we're certainly able to do that. We'll pick up on that one in a little while. Thank you for that. Thank you for coming along. It's been very useful. You have very useful, interesting questions from members. I think there's quite a bit come out of tonight. Actually, it's been well worth doing, I think, tonight. Next up, we have Jeanette Dallymore on Safe Walking. Jeanette. Oh, that's been covered in the section. Sorry, that's sorry. I've skipped a line actually. Next one, sorry, was Christine Adams, North Herts Citizen Advice, a presentation on scams. Christine. Thank you. We've got quite a heavy presence from the police there, more than we were expecting, but thank you for coming. Over to you now, then, Christine.
Hello, thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for asking me to come. Some of you I have met already, and to others, I am a new face. I'm actually a new face with regards to Citizens Advice scams, so I'm afraid you're my guinea pigs. I've been asked to come along and have a little chat to you about text and telephone scams. And it's something I've been working on over the last couple of months. And I hope, if nothing else, I can raise awareness with you. My role, part of my role, is going around the community and highlighting scams and putting on presentations for people, as well as raising the awareness of citizens' advice within the rural communities within North Herts. So it's a twofold role for me. Could I have the first? There we go. Thank you. I will zip through quickly because I'm conscious of time and I've been given, I think, 10 or 12 minutes. So it's a quick overview. What is a scam? It's basically a dishonest scheme. It's a fraud. It's a means to erode your confidence. And let's be, on no uncertain terms, it's a means to extract your money. Nothing more, nothing less. They want your money. Next slide. Scams, well, every day a new one, ever changing according to whatever may be in the news. Scammers will prey on people's fears, cost of living crisis being the headline of the moment. Scammers will piggyback onto government schemes such as HMRC refunds. Utilities offering deals that seem too good to be true. The list will evolve weekly, and they, as I've put already, will piggyback onto anything that is current. Next slide, please. Recognising, I've been asked to do telephone and text scams today, and the centre of my brief is banking scams. It's in the news almost daily. It's the biggest thing that's going on. But other things that are particularly relevant, computer repairs. I think we've all had a phone call saying, hello, I'm David. I'm from Microsoft and your computer is up the Swanee. Pension investment advice, that's a big thing as well, because that will swallow up every penny. There's no scruples there. They're not after a few £100. They'll take the lot. HMRC I've just mentioned. Number spoofing, if none of you know what that is, it is where they will seem to come up as a legit phone number on your smartphone, purporting to be from your bank or whoever. Parcel delivery scams, that's in the news quite a lot, saying you actually owe money to have a parcel delivered. That's not ever the case. And they will direct you towards a website that is not of the parcel delivery company. And membership scams, the likes of which Amazon, your Amazon Prime has run out, etc., etc. Next slide, please. Banking scams, that was the one that I put in the centre because it's the one in the news most of all. You may receive a phone call or a text out of the blue, unusual activity on your account. Well, it's going to put the fear of God into us all, isn't it? Or that your account has been frozen. They've instantly got your attention. The number that seems to be legitimate, that's the number spoofing that I mentioned before. It will come up as possibly your bank's phone number. They'll tell you to look on the back of your bank card, and that will be the number that they'll have on your phone. The bank will never, ever, ever use their number for you to contact them. If you think about it logically, they're not going to ring you on that number that they leave open for you to ring them. So that in itself is just nonsense. They'll ask for your bank details and to confirm your identity. It's amazing how many people will be happy to give that information, although they should have all of your details there if they are legitimately from your bank. And you may well also be directed to fake websites. That's what they want you to do, basically. I touched on HMRC messages promising refunds. I certainly have had one of these. Sadly not true. But this usually takes the form of a text or an email claiming that you're owed a tax refund. It's usually attached to a link to a website where you'll be asked to put your personal details in, the usual NI number, bank details, date of birth. Alarm bells scream straight away. Next slide, please. I've just highlighted a couple of scams that are around at the moment, and the one I mentioned is regarding the cost of living crisis, and it's fake texts and emails claiming to be from Ofgem, saying that you can apply for the government £400 energy rebate scheme. You don't have to apply for this. It's automatic, and you never need to apply for it. If you look at the bottom of this text, it says the address is bill-uk-gov.com. I think most of us know that is never gov.com, it's gov.uk. And that link instantly would put alarm bells through most people's minds. But that is a legitimate text. Could I have the next screen, please? Another legitimate one that's around at the moment. Loved ones in need of some cash. This tends to crop up sort of post-Christmas and post-people, when students return to university and college, and they like to use the hello mum, hello dad. Again, it puts the fear of God into any parent. Oh my goodness, what's happening with dearly beloved? This is a legitimate, not a legit, but this is a real text. Hello, mum. They've got you straight away, haven't they? Just dropped my phone down the toilet. I'm messaging you from my mate's number and their phone number is dying. Could you please WhatsApp me on? And again, it's a number that it's so believable, and you want to protect your children who are not around you at the moment. And it's a big scam, and it tends to rear its head, as I say, post-Christmas and just before they all go off to university or just gone off to university. Next one. I did trawl and get you a few stats. Unfortunately, stats are way behind what's happening at the moment. And so this just reflects the first half of 2022, and that's the most recent information I could glean. Fraud actually fell post the pandemic, strangely enough, because people resumed to their normal routines. Criminals stole a total of 608.8 million, a decrease of 13% compared to the first half of 2021. However, the total for 2021 was 2.35 billion, not million, but billion. It's an astounding amount of money. Focus recently has been on what's called authorized push payments, APP. And that is tricking you into authorizing a payment into an account that the fraudsters have control with. And the one that crops up is your bank account is being compromised. We need you to move the money into a safe account. And that's called APP, authorized push payments. And that's one that they're particularly worried about at the moment. Could have the next slide, please. Romance scams increased by 31%. This is in those figures I gave you for the first half of 2022, with 38% of dating site users stated they had been asked for money, and sadly 57% of those actually obliged. There's been an increase in the number of purchase scams. However, financially, the loss has decreased. I can't tell you why, but it's just a stat I thought would be interesting. Investment scams. This is the biggie. This is your pensions and your banking. This area is constantly the greatest concern for institutions like banks and pension companies. And they account for the largest proportion of losses of any APP type of scam. Have the next screen, please. Well, who are scammers targeting? Well, basically all of us. Let's be under no illusion. There are several vulnerable groups, however, and funnily enough, the young are more vulnerable than the elderly. And I don't know whether that's because the young think they're immune, they're never going to get caught, they're smart, but actually the young come out on top as being those most likely to be scammed. Those with disabilities, social renters, people on benefits, and inevitably the lonely, very sadly but true. Next screen, please. And I would urge you on my little rounds that I do with people, I'm going to say to them, ask yourself these questions. Does it sound too good to be true? Are they trying to help me, and why? How do they know all this information about me? How did they get my details? And you have to ask yourself, I think every single time you pick up the phone, answer an email, is this a scam? It's a sad fact of the world we live in, but it's the first thing that should come into your minds. Potentially, is this a scam? Next screen, please. I've just put a little bit about how you can avoid cold calls. Cold calls aren't always scams, but they are nuisance. They could be a scam. And it's very easy to register with the telephone preference service, the TPS. It's free, and it allows you to opt out of any unsolicited live telesales calls. I know that it works because I have it myself, and my calls just dropped off the edge of a cliff. It was amazing. Talk to your phone provider to see what other privacy services they have, call blocking, etc. And if you have a smartphone, you can use the settings on your hand for your set to block unwanted numbers. If you're not sure how to do this, every telephone shop will help. Next screen, please. Good practice. Don't reveal personal information, PIN numbers, passwords, etc. Ring the company or organization or on their customer number. Sorry, I can't read that far right. A bank or company will always be pleased to talk to you because it's to their benefit to prevent the fraud or a scam. Don't be rushed. Tell the caller to repeat the information. Ask for time to consider. A genuine company will be pleased to allow this. Stop. Think about it. If it looks too good to be true, it probably is. And as I said before, consider registering with the telephone preference service. That will stop unsolicited calls and sign up for alerts from scam awareness sites. Next, please. And lastly, there are means to report scams. Now, Action Fraud, sadly, don't intervene. They will not act on your behalf if you have been the victim of fraud. They are a data gathering service. However, you are always encouraged to report it to Action Fraud. Then they get an idea as to what's going on, what's the prevalent frauds at the moment, and they can send out information and deal with it in the way that they do. Of course, I put citizens' advice in there because we offer up-to-date information. We're impartial. Our information is checked and rechecked day in, day out to be correct. We're usually very, very up-to-date, and it's an easily navigable website. And last but not least is a website that I particularly like, and it's called Take 5. It's, again, easy to navigate, very user-friendly, up-to-date information, and that is their homepage if you want to have a look at it. Take 5, stopfraud.org.uk. Sadly, I have to say that 41% of all crime in England and Wales up to June 22 was scams. 41%. And another startling, I'm glad the police aren't here actually, because another startling statistic is that police resources within England and Wales, each officer who is allocated to deal with scams and fraud would have to deal with 2,500 cases each if they were to cover everything that's going on right now. And that's quite a frightening statistic. And because it's changing weekly, it's a question of catching up and never being ahead of the gang, I'm afraid. That concludes. I do have another slide, but I have tried it out and it doesn't work. It's a video. So I think I'd better leave that and conclude at this stage. But thank you for listening, and thank you for being my guinea pigs in going forward.
Thank you for that, and some very useful stuff there, and particularly the bit about the texts and the frauds, and the postal one in particular, because it's really sometimes difficult to tell what's real and what's not real. And if you do see anybody following any of these websites, the pages you go to, particularly for the good ones and the NHS stuff you get, looks really convincing. The forms fill in the same way. Everything works. It's only when you get the last little bit they start asking you money for stuff that they shouldn't be asking you for, that you cotton on what it is. Because I've done it myself a couple of times. I've also just kept ignoring one about a parcel from France, and then it got sent back because I didn't go back to it and pay the customs charge. But it looked like a fraud, but it wasn't. So any questions? First of all, I've got Nigel.
Thanks, that was really interesting. If somewhat depressing, I sat there thinking, oh, I've had that one, I've had that one, I've had that one, I've had that one. In fact, the student one really made me laugh because my son's just gone back to university and he's only been back a day. And I mean, you know, I knew it wasn't him, because if he dropped his phone down the toilet, he'd be making more noise than that, I tell you. The one that I've noticed recently, and I think you may have touched on, I wasn't sure, was I'm getting calls now where the caller identity, it looks like an 01462 number, or it looks like a local number, or it looks like a Stevenage number, or it looks like a Newcastle number, whatever. So I bothered to pick the phone up rather than just sing. So I picked the phone up duly expecting to be someone local, and it's not. And is that something, how are they doing that? I mean, partly my eyesight's rubbish, so maybe I don't read it properly, but there seems to be, the number looks like a local number, but then it's not. It's somebody from British Telecom or whatever else, Microsoft.
I don't know how they do it, but it's very clever software. And I know that it's being looked at very seriously at the moment as to how to stop that. It's a work in progress and something I will be looking up at over the next few months, but that is your number spoofing.
There is a program on TV. I think it's tomorrow night. I'm not sure what channel it's on. Exactly on this subject about how the scammers manage their scams and how they do those phone number things. And I've seen how it's done, and it's quite clever actually. It's quite a clever method of doing it. No, it's not. It's not. It's not just your imagination. That's how I was saying earlier. It's sometimes difficult to tell what's real and what's not real, and I think that's what the scammers are starting to rely on now. They are so convincing sometimes, and even a little blue underlined hyperlink you see, you could have one that looks like it's actually goes to gov.uk, but what you're actually reading isn't what's written. And there's clever ways of doing it, but yeah. So thank you very much for that. I've got no more questions on that one. So thank you for the presentation and thank you for the information. It's been very useful. Thank you. Right, next item on the agenda is overview and scrutiny committee resolutions, and we had a suggestion which I'll come back to at the end of it. But James, if you want to cover the current ones, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just to quickly update, task and finish group email has been sent round to group leaders now. I haven't received any nominations yet, so I'm still awaiting responses on that. The SPDs, which I think Councillor Compton asked about last time, are starting to now come to Cabinet. So there's one going in January. And there's also, there's a strategic planning matters item going in January, which details some of the SPDs. So the sustainability one is due for March 23 for a draft, and the design code is scheduled for autumn 23 for a draft version. Equality, diversity and inclusion strategy. Following comments at ONS in December, it was recommended to Cabinet to make the glossary appendix a live document to be kept up to date by officers. However, following discussions at Council and advice from the monitoring officer, it was felt more suitable to remove the reference from to the glossary from the strategy, as it was not imperative to the policy and would put undue pressure on officers to keep it updated, and that was carried at Cabinet. And on the corporate peer action challenge action plan, the previous version has been removed as per the chair's request at the last meeting. And I believe there are still ongoing discussions with the LGA about the content of the new version. And as soon as we've agreed that and it's been signed off, then that will be shared with members. That's all from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, James. Any comments, questions on what we've got so far? Claire?
Yes, I am looking for Conservative members to sit on the task and finish group, and yes, it was only when I realised this was on the agenda, it did prompt me to send them all a note, so hopefully I'll get some names. Just on the last item, which is the peer challenge action plan, you said it was shared with members. Does that mean we'll have it here as an agenda item?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, we could do that, I suppose, and discuss it as the scrutiny committee. Yeah, I haven't seen it, and as I say, I think there's still some questions about what was included in it that need to be agreed with the LGA. But yeah, I mean, in theory, before we bring it as an appendix, we could bring it as an item to the committee.
Well, I think it's a lot of the content in it is going to be about scrutiny and how scrutiny is delivered, because that's what they were reviewing, as I remember. So many. Sometime last year, months, or was it before you even, James? Yeah. Well, yeah, it was a long time ago. So I think it's not just review members. I think this would need to come as an agenda item to the committee for us to come and look and discuss it. So I would hope that we would get that on our agenda, probably not the next meeting, but the one after. If it is on the next meeting, fantastic.
Yeah, if we can just make sure that is on the next one, James, because it has come back. And I say it was before your time again, and it was quite a long time ago. And I know there has been a report, and I haven't seen it, and nobody, as far as aware, has seen it. But it would be nice to see that and have it shared for us, please. On any other recommendations during that, while the police were here, there was a recommendation that we do something about the Women's Safety Charter and that type of thing. Just been exchanging notes with Steve here about that. It's a community safety partnership project, and we already have a multi-agency subgroup working on that. However, I think it is important that we push this. So I think I'd like to put a resolution before this committee that we take to full council that the committee, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, supports the work of the Community Safety Partnership in delivering their projects, particularly the Women's Safety Charter, and ask full council to endorse that support and continue with that support. It would also give us a chance to get some of the stuff that's come out tonight in a smaller group into the larger realm of council. So I think if we would just jiggle with the word, but I think, have you got the gist of what I'm trying to say there? That we make this committee recommends the supports the communities, recommends to council that we continue to support Community Safety Partnership in delivering their projects and the work with the multi-agency subgroups, in particular the Women's Safety Charter, and recommends this to council. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Val. We'll jiggle the words slightly to get it making a bit more sense. So can I take that to the vote, please, James?
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much indeed. That being said, we also have another recommendation that we note the report on the resolutions. Can I have a seconder on that one, please? Well, lots of seconders. I'll take Val because she got her hand up first. And if we can move to the vote on that one, please, that we note the report.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. The next item, Enterprise Update Part 1. I'm actually going to take this after 12 and 13 because I think some of the stuff, again, with the Enterprise report, there's some stuff that crosses over between the two, and I think it's safe to say it's a Part 2 item first. So we're going to move to item 12, exclusion of the press and public. And I propose that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the following report will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the said Act as amended. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Phil. Move to the vote, please.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. So if we can move to the part 2 item on the enterprise. Steve, because can you take that one? It was a minutes of the 28th and a minutes of the 6th. Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Welcome back, anybody who's been watching. We move back into the part one things, item 11, enterprise update, part one. You have all the report in front of you there. Do I have any questions on that report? Nope. So if we can move the recommendations, we note the report. We can, do I have a seconder for that, please? Yep. Thank you, Alistair. If we can move to the vote, please.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you. And our final item on the agenda is overview and scrutiny work programme. James to present, and there was a question asked earlier about the I can't remember what it was now. Claire, you asked it. What was it called? Oh, the report back on the housing on the accommodation thing. So what you asked for, that is on the work programme for March. The report back on call to account and the report from the housing manager as well. You asked for.
Yes, just to update quickly. So yeah, that's we're still expecting the chair's report to be brought to the March committee, and I've spoken with the strategic housing manager who's looking to schedule again in March for that March meeting to come and give more of a forward-looking exercise, I think, rather than reflecting previously. I think he felt there had been enough reflection and that actually it would be more positive now to look forward to what is happening at the Lord Lister Hotel and what's happening with strategic housing matters regarding that.
Okay, Claire.
Yeah. Yes, I think it'd be useful to have a report on the homeless, strategic homeless that we have in the district, and an update on not only facility in Lord Lister, there's also the one in Baldock, and there's also perhaps whether or not any building has actually started working on the new facility. Perhaps also it might be quite to also perhaps understand what's happening at the shelter on the corner of Grove Road as well, because that's always played quite an important part in the homelessness in the district. I mean, that obviously changed when the pandemic came. It might be quite, I certainly would find it interesting to know how that facility is also running. Perhaps you could ask him on that. And perhaps also, that's a bit cheeky, but I didn't get an answer with the question I asked at full council, so perhaps you'd be able to answer that as well for me.
Adam.
Thanks, Chair. Probably a bit of a pedantic point, but in Appendix A, the Lord Lister, etc., was still reading to be scheduled. Are we able to get that moved to the 9th of March just for the accuracy of the minutes?
Yeah, so I left it there just until I'd spoken to the chair about it. But yeah,
so I'll come back to the minutes next time, and I'll think they're not due yet, and I'll get confused because that's a couple of months away now.
Yeah.
Terry.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to add clarity, in the 9th of March session, it says annual report. Is that the council's annual report, Overview and Scrutiny's annual report, or just your report?
It should be the annual report of Overview and Scrutiny Committee looking back on what it's done this year.
And the same apply, the work programme I can understand, but the annual report, so it's the annual report of Overview and Scrutiny.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
Perhaps to say clarity would be helpful. Please.
I'll add that in March, yep.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got nobody else wishes to speak on that one. So bear in mind those changes that James has made a note of. Members happy to note the report with those changes to the thing. Do I have a second for that, please? So, Adam, thank you on that one. Go to vote, please.
Chair, that motion is carried.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our business for this evening. Meeting closed at 9:28, going by my watch.